Welcome to The Tar Heel, a compelling collection of first-hand accounts and historical insights that bring to life the experience of North Carolina soldiers during the American Civil War. Known as Tar Heels for their state's production of tar and pitch, these soldiers left an indelible mark on some of the most pivotal battles and moments in American history. It is written by Louis Leon, who served as a private in the 53rd North Carolina Infantry Regiment. These are his words. July 1st, 1863, we left camp at 6 a.m., passed through Hadlersburg and Middletown. At the latter place, we heard firing in the direction of Gettysburg. We were pushed forward after letting the wagon trains get in our rear. We got to Gettysburg at 1 p.m., 15 miles. We were drawn up in line of battle about 1 mile south of town and a little to the left of the Lutheran Seminary. We then advanced to the enemy's line of battle in double quick time. We had not gotten more than 50 paces when Norman of our company fell dead by my side. Katz was going to pick him up. I stopped him, as it is strictly forbidden for anyone to help take the dead or wounded off the field except the ambulance corps. We then crossed over a rail fence, where our Lieutenant McMatthews and Lieutenant Alexander were both wounded. That left us with a captain and one lieutenant. After this, we got into battle in earnest and lost in our company very heavily, both killed and wounded. This fight lasted 4 hours and a half, when at last we drove them clear out of town and took at least 3,000 prisoners. They also lost very heavily in killed and wounded, which all fell into our hands. After the fight, our company was ordered to pick up all straggling Yankees in town and bring them together to be brought to the rear as prisoners. One fellow I took up could not speak one word of English, and the first thing he asked me in German was, "Will I get my pay in prison?" After we had them all put up in a pen, we went to our regiment and rested. Major Iredell of our regiment came to me and shook my hand and also complimented me for action in the fight. At dusk, I was about going to hunt up my brother Morris when he came to me. Thank God, we are both safe as yet. We lay all night among the dead Yankees, but they did not disturb our peaceful slumbers. July 2nd, our division was in reserve until dark, but our regiment was supporting a battery all day. We lost several killed and wounded, although we had no chance to fire, only lay by a battery of artillery and be shot at. The caisson of the battery we were supporting was blown up, and we got a good sprinkling of the wood from it. Just at dark, we were sent to the front under terrible cannonading. Still, it was certainly a beautiful sight. It being dark, we could see the cannon vomit forth fire. Our company had to cross a rail fence. It gave way, and several of our boys were hurt by others walking over them. We lay down here a short time, in fact no longer than 10 minutes, when I positively fell asleep. The cannonading did not disturb me. One of the boys shook me and told me Katz was wounded by a piece of a shell striking him on the side, and he was sent to the rear. We went on to the Baltimore Turnpike until 3 in the morning of the 3rd. July 1st, when under a very heavy fire, we were ordered on Culp's Hill to the support of General A. Johnson. Here we stayed all day. No, here, I may say, we melted away. We were on the brow of one hill, the enemy on the brow of another. We charged on them several times, but of course, running down our hill and then to get to them was impossible, and every time we attempted it, we came back leaving some of our comrades behind. Here, our Lieutenant Belt lost his arm. We have now, in our company, a captain. All of our lieutenants are wounded. We fought here until 7 p.m., when what was left of us was withdrawn and taken to the first day's battlefield. At the commencement of this fight, our brigade was the strongest in our division, but she is not now. We lost the most men, for we were in the fight all the time, and I have it from Colonel Owens that our regiment lost the most in the brigade. I know that our company went into the fight with 60 men. When we left Culp's Hill, there were 16 of us that answered to the roll call. The balance were all killed and wounded. There were 12 sharpshooters in our company, and now John Cochran and myself are the only ones that are left. This day none will forget that participated in the fight. It was truly awful how fast, how very fast did our poor boys fall by our sides, almost as fast as the leaves that fell as cannon and musket balls hit them as they flew on their deadly errand. You could see one with his head shot off, others cut in two, then one with his brain oozing out, one with his leg off, others shot through the heart. Then you would hear some poor friend or foe crying for water, or for God's sake to kill him. You would see some of your comrades, shot through the leg, lying between the lines, asking his friends to take him out, but no one could get to his relief, and you would have to leave him there, perhaps to die, or, at best, to become a prisoner. Our brigade was the only one that was sent to Culp's Hill to support General Johnson. In our rapid firing today, my gun became so hot that the ramrod would not come out, so I shot it at the Yankees and picked up a gun from the ground, a gun that some poor comrade dropped after being shot. I wonder if it hit a Yankee. If so, I pity him. Our regiment was in a very exposed position at one time today, and our General Daniels ordered a courier of his to bring us from the hill. He was killed before he got to us. The general sent another. He was also killed before he reached us. Then General Daniels would not order anyone, but called for volunteers. Captain Ed Stitt of Charlotte, one of his aides, responded, and he took us out of the exposed position. July 4th, we lay on the battlefield of the first day, this, the 4th of July. No fighting today, but we are burying the dead. They have been lying on the field in the sun since the first day's fight, it being dusty and hot. The dead smell terribly. The funny part of it is, the Yankees have all turned black. Several of our company, wounded, have died. Katz is getting along all right. The battle is over, and although we did not succeed in pushing the enemy out of their strong position, I am sure they have not anything to boast about. They have lost at least as many in killed and wounded as we have. We have taken more prisoners from them than they have from us. If that is not the case, why did they lay still all today and see our army going to the rear? An army that has gained a great victory follows it up while its enemy is badly crippled. But Meade, their commander, knows he has had as much as he gave, at least, if not more. As yet, I have not heard a word from my brother Morris since the first day's fight. July 5th, left this morning at 5 o'clock, only marched 10 miles today, the enemy being in our rear and skirmishing very strong. July 6th, our company was ordered out as skirmishers today, as our regular skirmish corps was broken up during the fight. We were the rear of the army, and therefore had a very hard job before us. Fighting all day and falling back, we certainly had fun. We were close enough to the enemy to hear their commands. We would hold them in check and give them a few rounds, then fall back again. They would then advance until we would make a stand, fight again, and so it was until we reached Fairfield, 6 miles from Gettysburg. I don't think there were many lost on either side in this skirmish. We crossed South Mountain at Monterey Gap. When we came to the above town, I pressed into service a citizen's coat in this way. We were ordered to rest, and, as usual, we would sit on fences and lie about the road. Some of the boys jumped on an old hog pen. It broke through. They fell in, and, lo and behold, There were boxes of clothing, dresses, shawls, blankets, and, in fact, everything in the line of wearing apparel. I, being a little fellow, crawled through some of the boys' legs and captured the coat. If the fool citizen would have left his things in his house, they would have been safe, but to put it in our way was too much for us to leave behind. We also passed through Waynesboro and Leitersburg and halted in Hagerstown, Maryland on the evening of the 7th. We marched yesterday and all night up to 11 o'clock, 24 miles. Julie ate, we are resting, and, goodness knows, we need it very much. I sold my coat for $20 and a gray jacket. We lost, in the last fight, in our company 11 killed and 26 wounded. 3 of the latter will not live, and 9 of our number became prisoners, besides the wounded. Our 3 lieutenants are all wounded and prisoners. Katz is also a prisoner. Nothing further up to the 10th. July 10th, move 4.5 miles on the other side of town. We have fortified ourselves here. July 11th East orders read out today from our father, R. E. Lee, that we would fight the enemy once more on their own soil, as they were now in our front. That order got to them and fulfilled its mission, as we were then on our way to the Potomac, they still thinking we could not cross the river because the river was very high from the recent rains, and we had but one pontoon bridge. At 10 of the night, we formed in line of battle, got to our position when our regiment was ordered to support a battery. Lay on our arms all night. July 12th, went back to our brigade this morning, skirmishing very heavy on the left and center. July 13th, news came to us today that Vicksburg had fallen on the 4th. Heavy skirmishing, fighting all day. Our brigade again acted as the rear of our corps, our regiment being its rear. We started our retreat at dark and marched to Williamsport, 6 miles, through mud and slush ankle deep and raining very hard. We marched 1 mile to the right of and crossed the Potomac at midnight after wading through the canal, which we destroyed. The river was up to my chin and very swift. We crossed in 4s for protection, as otherwise we could not have crossed. Our cartridge boxes we carried around our necks to keep the powder dry. On the south bank, tar was poured so that we would not slip back in the river, as the mud was very slick. J. Engel of our company was stuck in until some of the boys pulled him out. We went 6 miles further, and I honestly believe more of us were asleep on our night's march than awake. But still, all kept up, for the rear was prison. We then halted, made fire to dry ourselves, just as day was breaking on the morning of the 14th. July 14th, the roads are so bad that it is hard work to trudge along. I stuck in the mud several times and lost one shoe in a mud hole, but of course took it out again. One consolation we have got, it is raining so hard that the mud is washed off our clothing. Therefore they were not soiled too bad. But the devil of it is there is no blacking to shine our shoes with. Marched 16 miles and halted. We are now, thank God, on Confederate soil. But oh, how many of our dear comrades have we left behind? We can never forget this campaign. We had hard marching, hard fighting, suffered hunger and privation, but our general officers were always with us to help the weary soldier carry his gun or let him ride. In a fight, they were with us to encourage. Many a general have I seen walk, and a poor sick private riding his horse, and our father Lee was scarcely ever out of sight when there was danger. We could not feel gloomy when we saw his old gray head uncovered as he would pass us on the march or be with us in a fight. I care not how weary or hungry we were. When we saw him, we gave that rebel yell, and hunger and wounds would be forgotten. July 15th, We marched 5 miles today and were compelled to halt, as our wagon trains had to get in our front. I and 2 of our mess killed 3 turkeys, took them with us to 1 mile from Martinsburg, Virginia, where we camped, and the bones of those turkeys were left behind. July 16th. Left this morning at 7, marched to Darksville, 8 miles. July 17th. Raining very hard today, and we are resting. July 20th. Went on picket today, stayed there 1 hour, and was ordered back. Got to camp and found our brigade gone. We marched to Martinsburg, halted at 10 at night, 2 miles from town, 10 miles today. July 21st, went through town at 5 this morning to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad with Johnson's division and part of Hampton's Legion to tear up the railroad. We destroyed 6 miles of it and returned to our camp at Darksville, 15 miles today. July 22nd, left this morning at 5, marched through Winchester, 3 miles, and halted. July 23rd, left at 5 this morning, went through Front Royal, 17 miles today, waded the south and north prongs of the Shenandoah River. We then took the road to Manassas Gap, marched 3 miles when we met the enemy and had brisk firing until dark. Their line is very strong. They advanced in 2 lines in very fine order. When they got within range of our guns, we opened on them, and they scattered like bluebirds. We had a beautiful view of this fight as we are on the mountain. Neither of the armies can move without being seen by the other. Our corps of sharpshooters has been formed again since a few days ago. We were sent to the support of the other corps. We were within 20 yards of the enemy's line until midnight, when we fell back in good order. July 24th, marched 2 miles up Chester Gap, when we were about faced, and marched through Front Royal again. We here took the Strasburg road at daylight. We resumed our march and halted at 3 in the evening. We have been on a forced march 3 days and nights, waded rivers, fought skirmishes, and marched in that time 45 miles. We are camped in an apple orchard in a village called Milford. July 25th, left this morning at 7 o'clock, halted at 3 in the afternoon, 16 miles. July 26th, rested today. William Eagle and myself went up the Blue Ridge to gather berries and were lost in the woods for 1 hour. July 27th, left this morning at 5, crossed the Blue Ridge at Thornton Gap. We camped 1 mile from Sperryville, marched 13 miles today. July 28th, left at 6 this morning, marched 10 miles, and halted on the mountain. July 29th, left at 7, marched until 3, camped 1 mile from Madison Courthouse, marched 10 miles today. July 30th, still in camp. Hugh Sample and myself were out on a forage and milked a cow in his hat, the only thing we had. July 31st, we left here tonight, marched 7 miles, and halted. August 1st, resumed our march at 4 this morning and got to Orange Courthouse, 14 miles. It is a very hot day, and there were several men fell dead on the road from sunstroke. We rested here until the 4th. August 4, left our camp, marched 3 miles, 1 mile on the south side of town. August 11th, nothing up to today. This, I suppose, is to be our regular camp, as we have commenced to drill again. August 12th, we had a very severe storm today, which killed 2 men and hurt several of our brigade. It tore up trees and played smash in general. August 23rd, they have commenced to give furloughs, 1 to every 2 companies. August 24th, was on guard this morning, but Sergeant Hugh Reed sent for me and detailed me, with some men out of every regiment in our brigade, to hunt deserters. See Wolfe and myself out of our company. We left camp at 3 this evening, marched 2 miles up the railroad, and took the cars to Gordonsville. Got there at 4. It is a small place, but one of importance, as all our supplies for the army from Richmond come from this station. August 25th, took the cars at 5 a.m. and got to Keswick, a depot on the Staunton Road. We left here after staying 1 hour and took our posts in the woods. As we are about 20 men, with one lieutenant in command, we made no camp but stayed about here and reported every time there was any news about deserters. Wolfe and myself went out in the country to houses that we were told harbored deserters. We passed ourselves off as such and were well received and got some valuable information. They told us that the deserters were in the woods. We then returned to our companions and got well soaked, as it was raining very hard. Stayed in a barn all night. August 26th, we stayed in the woods all day, but at night went out scouting for deserters, but did not find any. August 27th, returned at 7 this morning. Went out again at dark. Went through 4 houses of bad repute, but found not one deserter. Went 12 miles this night. August 28th, we moved this evening, and I stayed in a gentleman's house all night with Wolfe. August 29th, returned to our companions this morning at 10 o'clock. August 30th, left at 5 in the morning. We hunted through the cliffs for several hours and caught one deserter. Several of our men and myself dined in a widow lady's house. There were quite a number of ladies there, and we had a very pleasant time. Then we went to Mr. Bell's and had supper there. From there we went to Mr. Wheeler's and stayed all night. August 31st, went to Mr. Watkins's, took dinner there, and stayed all day. Had a very pleasant time with his daughter, Miss Annie. September years. Today we went on a general hunt in full force. We went into a house where we suspected there was a deserter. We hunted through all the outbuildings, then went to the house, and the lady strongly denied there being anyone there, but wouldn't give us permission to look. We then searched the house, but found no one. I then proposed that we go in the loft. She objected again, but of course we were determined. It was pitch dark in the loft. We called in, but no answer came. I then proposed, in a loud voice so that if anyone was there they could hear me, that we fix bayonets and stick around and satisfy ourselves that no one was there. Still no answer. I then got in the loft, took my gun, and commenced sticking around. At last an answer came from the far corner that he would surrender. The way I got into the loft was, I being a little fellow and C. Wolfe a tall man, they put me on his shoulder, and in that way I crawled in. We then left for camp, passed a church, and was in time to see a wedding. We drilled for the ladies and had a good time. September 2nd. On a hunt today, several of my comrades with myself came to a house, and the first thing we heard was, "Is there a Jew in your detachment that caught a deserter yesterday? They would like to see him," etc. At last one of the boys told them that I was the Jew. After that I had a very good time there, and in fact wherever I went I was received very kindly, and was very sorry to see on the 4th that orders came for us to return to our brigade. September 4th, marched to Keswick, and found that we would have to march to Gordonsville. Got there that night, 15 miles today. September 5th, left here at 7, got to brigade at 10 in the morning, and from the 24th of last month up to date, I certainly have seen the best time since the war. September 6th, our captain, Harvey White, returned to camp yesterday from a furlough. September 8th, we are getting ready for a corps review for tomorrow. September 9th, today, we had a review. Present, General Lee, General Ewell, General Early, General Johnson, and General Rhodes of our corps, and General Hill General J.E.B. Stuart, and smaller fry of our army. It was certainly a grand scene. Nothing more up to the 14th. September 14th, left camp this morning at 7. Marched 12 miles and halted. Here firing in front on the Rapidan at Somerville Ford. Here all night. September 15th, still some firing in front. We are in reserve. I went to see the fight. I saw the enemy very plainly, and thus I spent my New Year's Day. September 16th, today there was a man shot for desertion. 8 balls passed through him. The way this is conducted is, the brigade that he belongs to, or sometimes even the division, is drawn up in full sight of the doomed man. He is tied to a stake in front of his grave, which is already dug, and his coffin at his side. There is a squad of 12 men and 1 officer detailed to do the shooting. 11 of the guns are loaded. The guns are given to them by the officer, so that no man knows which gun is unloaded. The order is then given to fire. Thus ends the deserter's life. The brigade or division then marches around him so that every man can see his, the deserter's, end. September 17th. Very little firing today. September 18th. Raining hard all day and no tents. Left camp at 2 in the afternoon. Marched 6 miles. Halted at the river. And our regiment went on picket. It is still raining very hard, and we are as wet as drowned cats, and cold too, for we cannot make a fire in front of the enemy. If we did, they would have a good mark to shoot at. September 19th, we are at Moulton's Ford. September 20th, in speaking distance of the Yankees. September 21st, our regiment was relieved today by the 3rd Alabama of Battle's Brigade. September 22nd, I spoke and exchanged papers with a Yankee of the 7th Ohio Regiment. September 23rd, Day of Atonement, today. Nothing more. Up to the 26th, September 26th, we have built ourselves cabins in our camps. This evening, we went on picket. September 27th, the Yankees are very active today. Something is up. September 28th, our regiment is on picket. Will be relieved tomorrow. September 29th, all quiet today. Brother Morris returned from Richmond yesterday, where he has been for 10 days on a furlough. Before our Jewish New Year, there was an order read out from General Lee granting a furlough to each Israelite to go to Richmond for the holidays, if he so desired. I did not care to go. September 30th, we are shooting at the Yankees today for fun, as they are trying to steal sheep from the houses that are between our lines. That concludes the 3rd part of the story. Thank you very much for listening. Please subscribe for more episodes and leave a comment.